Let's talk Tanya for the 18th of Elul, Chai Elul, a very special day, the birthday of the Alter Rebbe. In yesterday's Tanya, we explained that because mibsari echze elika, the verse tells us that we can look at ourselves and actually have an understanding about God. And the reason for that is because we are all created b'tselem elikim, in God's image, and therefore we have in microcosm that which God has also. So God has 10 attributes, we have 10 attributes. We can examine and analyze our attributes and have some sort of understanding in God. Over here, the Alter Rebbe is going to give us a disclaimer. And the Alter Rebbe is going to cite a teaching which he heard from his teacher, the Maggid of Mezrich. It's one of the two places in Tanya where the Alter Rebbe directly quotes his teacher. And it's based on the pasuk, the verse in Bereshis, where Avram Avinu turns to God and says, "Va'anoichi ofar ve'efer, I am but dust and ashes." Now, obviously, Avram Avinu is expressing his incredible humility and how he lacked any importance in his own eyes. But what is the significance of dust and ashes? Why dust and ashes? Are those the only two things that he can think of? And why both of them? So the Alter Rebbe explains, again, citing from his teacher, that we know Avram Avinu, Avram, he excelled in chesed, in kindness. And we know that chesed, kindness, is one of the divine attributes. So one might think, okay, so God has the attribute of kindness, and Avraham had the attribute of kindness. Now, obviously, God is greater than Avraham. So on a scale from 1 to 10, if Avram's kindness is a 1, so God's kindness is a 10. Say you have like an IQ, right? One person is smarter and another person is less smart. So the same thing is also, but more or less it's the same idea. It's the same concept. It's kindness, and kindness, just more kindness, maybe even infinitely greater kindness. So Avram was trying to correct that misconception by comparing himself to dust and ashes. Why dust and ashes? We know that everything in this world is comprised of 4 elements, and the 4 elements are earth and water and wind and fire. So imagine you have a gorgeous, tall, towering tree, or a beautiful, large piece of wooden furniture. And then the tree gets burnt down, or the furniture gets burned. And what do we have remaining is ashes. What happened? When something gets burnt, when a piece of wood gets burned, the water departs, the water evaporates in the fire, the wind also leaves in the smoke, and the fire also goes away in the fire. And all you have left is the element of earth. Now, before this tree was burned, or before this piece of furniture was burned, so it was comprised of all 4 elements, but what was the bulk of the tree or the piece of furniture? Wood is comprised primarily of earth. The other elements, the water and the wind and the fire, are far less tangible. So it's fair to say that when I'm looking at the ashes over here, which is just the earth or the dust that we have over here, it's pretty much the same thing as the original tree or as the piece of wood. It would be fair to say that. But to look at the ashes and say, oh, it's really the same thing, that would obviously be very incorrect. Avram Avinu was saying, I want you to realize my kindness, as great as it is, and here we're talking about the kindness of Avram Avinu, as great as my kindness is, in comparison to God's kindness, it is like the dust in the ashes compared to the piece of wood itself. There is no comparison whatsoever. And that is when we're talking about the kindness of Avram Avinu. How much more so if we're going to look at our own kindness, and we are so small compared to Avram, and try to say, oh, I'm going to look at it and have an understanding in God's kindness. That's like looking at ashes and trying to understand the tree. So, although we do say mibsari echze elika, we do say that we can look at ourselves and have some sort of understanding in God. We have to understand the limitations in this. That God is quantitatively and qualitatively, He and His attributes are so removed from our existence that whatever understanding we have is extremely, extremely limited in nature. So once we have that disclaimer and this larger understanding, yes, we can understand something about God by looking at ourselves. But no, it is not a complete understanding in any which way. Well, now we can proceed to actually talking about our attributes and trying to have a deeper understanding of God's attributes. And we'll continue on this journey, God willing, in tomorrow's Tanya.